Hello, everybody. Very nice to see you all today. We're here for this Tech Talk session on the real cost of menopause in the workplace. Hi, Barb.
Max, it's a great time to be together because things are starting to change when it comes to the menopause conversation.
They absolutely are. You're 100% correct there. So, hello, everyone. My name is Max Landry. I'm one of the founders and co-CEO of Peppy. I'm joined today by Barb Dean. Barb, I'll let you introduce yourself.
Well, hi, everyone. I'm Barb Dean. I'm a women's health nurse practitioner. I'm also certified by the North American Menopause Society as a menopause practitioner. I wrote a book called The Hot Guide to a Cool, Sexy Menopause, and I'm the vice president of women's health here at Peppy. Oh, yes, and I'm Nurse Barb on NBC's California Live.
Thanks, Barb. Amazing. So really what we're going to explore today is the real cost of menopause in the workplace. I think this is a fairly new phenomenon. I don't think people have talked about it much, but thankfully this taboo is beginning to be broken. And Barb, I think you can really take some of the credit for helping to break that taboo. I just wanted to throw out a few stats at the beginning, which you and I know a bit about, but may be surprising for other people. But the first one is women of a menopausal age, and by that I mean women over the age of 45, make up more than 20% of the US workforce. So that's something that when I discovered, I thought, wow, this is significant. And then the second thing is a statistic you shared with me from the pipeline, that when you have more women in charge and in senior roles in companies, you end up getting better profitability, better share prices, better sales, whatever the metric you're looking at, they perform better. And so I guess the real question is, why aren't we getting more women, senior women in leadership positions?
It's such a great question, right? I think we all know those companies that are run by women that are doing really, really well. And I think that when we think about why that happens, let's all acknowledge that women are multitaskers. You know, our brains do work differently. But why aren't there more women in senior leadership when we know that it works better if we were just more of us were in charge? I think it's because there's a lot of taboo, to your point, about talking about some of the challenges that women face at midlife, just kind of at the peak of their career. Most women who are at the peak of their career didn't get where they are by being vulnerable or saying, gee, I didn't sleep at all last night because I'm having hot flashes and night sweats and I'm not in charge of my biology. I mean, what woman would want to say that at work, Max?
No, I can only imagine. Yeah, and I can imagine that women don't want to say that, and yet they're grappling with some of these symptoms, and you described a couple then, and yet you can't talk about it, it's taboo, and yet this is something that's affecting 20% of the workforce. It just seems completely ridiculous.
Right. I mean, 20%, that's 1 in 5 people. And yet it's a very hidden and invisible issue. Menopause really is impacting so many different companies, you know, from companies that work in construction, which you might be thinking, well, that's very male dominated, or women in tech. That's what we found, right? When we launched with one of our big tech companies here in the Bay Area, there was so much unmet need that women were clamoring within the first 30 minutes of the launch to talk to our practitioners. So women are struggling with some of these issues. And I just want to kind of say something. You know, we've started to acknowledge that new parents have sleep deprivation, and we give maternity and
I agree
paternity
with
leave.
that. I can vouch for that myself, Bob. Yeah.
And when we started to acknowledge that people have challenges outside of the workplace and we provide support, people were at their best. They were able to be more effective. They were able to collaborate more. And there was, it was better for companies. And I think it's just starting with menopause. You read that article in the New York Times, right, Max?
Yeah, absolutely. And I think you're completely right. We're on this wave of just what was something that was completely taboo, even I'd say even a year ago. Suddenly in the United States, we're seeing this tipping point where I think it's a combination of women saying enough is enough, why aren't we getting support? And also employers waking up to the fact that by supporting these areas in people's lives, you really help people be the best they can be. And of course, what employers want. Can just there will be people on this call, Barb, that just don't know what the menopause is, and that's totally understandable. Could you just give us a very quick overview as like what is the menopause, Barb?
Sure. So menopause is a natural phase in women's lives. All women will go through it. It's when their periods stop. It's that day in their lives when they haven't had a period for 12 months. But the issue is not just that day. It's the 3 to 7 or 10 years that precede it, that come before the perimenopause, when there's irregular periods, hot flashes, night sweats, sleep interruption, exhaustion, fatigue. The problem is many providers, many healthcare providers, and many women are not connecting the dots that these symptoms that are overwhelming, that impact their lives both at home and at work, are related to hormonal changes. So women often come in to see me and they're like, I can't think properly. I have brain fog. I'm going to have to retire early. And they've seen other healthcare providers who ordered MRIs looking for Alzheimer's. They're not connecting the dots. So this is menopause. And Max, I want to ask you something. Here in the US, we're starting to see this change. You're from the UK. You guys are a couple years ahead, right? The conversation about menopause already accelerated a few years ago. What happened? Do you see that employers over in the UK started to recognize the benefits of talking about menopause?
Yeah, 100%. I mean, it feels like there was this wave. I mean, the wave that feels like it's starting now in the United States felt like it started 2 or 3 years ago in the United Kingdom, to be honest. And it went from very quickly being a sort of periphery discussion around how you break a taboo into becoming something that became very mainstream very quickly. And ultimately, where did that end up? It ended up with women basically saying, look, we expect support for this, you know, in the same way that we would expect support for maternity leave or paternity leave, like you said earlier. And what was really interesting is that shift, and it's really a cultural shift, both, you know, in society, but also with employers, happened very, very quickly. I would say over the course of about 3 years. And it's exactly what it feels like in the United States today. So it's a very exciting time for women, I think. And also for employers to be able to offer this new type of support. But can I just ask you a specific, Barb, on that? So we know that this is a big thing. It's a big change that women go through, typically between the ages of 45 and 55. But could you just illustrate what some of the symptoms of menopause are? Because I think that will help people on this call both better understand why it can be challenging for women, but also help them to understand why this is something that it's in the interest of employers to help to resolve.
That's really, really important. So we know that virtually every cell in a woman's body has an estrogen receptor. So as estrogen levels start to decline, or they vary, because there can be wide swings like a hormonal roller coaster, there's impacts on sleep. There's impacts on the brain. So many women start to have hot flashes and night sweats, but they have a lot of sleep disruption and what we know as sleep fragmentation. There's a lot of good evidence that shows us that the next day, the very next day after sleep fragmentation, women are more irritable, they're more depressed, and their cognition is not up to snuff. It's not as good as it should be. Now, perimenopause can be 3 to 7 years. So, you know, most of us could survive 3 to 7 days without good restorative sleep. But 3 to 7 years has a huge impact. And that 3 to 7 years of sleep disruption, exhaustion, and fatigue, you know how that translates, Max? It's women who come to see me in my office, and when the doors close, they're saying, I can't function. I've been offered a promotion, but I don't think I can take it because I've got to manage all these symptoms and figure it out, right? Or, gee, I've worked all my life, but I'm going to have to retire early because I can't manage these symptoms and do my job effectively. And Max, I know you know this, but I want to say, we know that 1 in 4 women consider leaving their jobs because of their menopausal symptoms. And how many actually do leave their job? It turns out to be 1 in 10. That's 10%. And in our industries, we can't afford to lose anyone, let alone 10% of this valuable workforce. So those symptoms have a huge impact. And I guess I would say to anyone out there, if you have a new baby, a new pet, or you're caring for an elderly relative, and you know how hard it is to function the next day on sleep deprivation, compound that by years and years and years.
Wow. Yeah. And when you say that, I mean, you said 3 to 7 nights of no sleep is difficult. 3 to 7 years is very challenging. And I completely agree. As you were talking through those experiences, Barb, of the consultations you've done with senior women when they're saying, I can't necessarily go for promotion, or I'm even considering leaving work early, which is obviously a depressing thing for you to hear and for us all to hear. But it really sort of makes me think of these big strategic issues that all organizations are facing. I mean, I've had a lot of discussions with senior people in companies, as I know you have, and three themes just seem to come up always. They are: we want more women in senior leadership positions, point one; we want to close the gender pay gap, point two; and of course, we want to close the retirement gap that is prevalent because of the gender pay gap. And it just really strikes me that you can't really engage in those big, lofty strategic goals without engaging in something quite tactical like menopause, which is really creating those effects that you just described on exactly the women that you want to become the women who might join your board, who might become a partner, who might take that senior leadership position. And of course, this filters through to the gender pay gap. And it's just shocking. Yeah. So yeah, what do you think about that?
Yeah, and whether you have those really big, lofty goals, or you are somebody who's managing a team and you want more productivity, or you're wondering why someone's not at their best first thing in the morning. Max, remember, you and I spoke at a huge bank here in the US, and we thought that women would not want to talk about menopausal symptoms because they're bankers after all, right? As soon as we opened the door and we made it safe that women could talk about this, it was like the floodgates open. They wanted to talk about their challenges. And what we found was some women were not comfortable, and that's okay. You don't have to talk about it. But some women almost became like a menopause champion. And they were like, hey, this is how you navigate it in this workplace. And these were women from all around the world. And it was really encouraging to me because it felt like, gosh, as soon as we open the door, as soon as we make it safe, women are saying, here's some of my issues. And then they were talking amongst each other like, this works or that works, or try this or try that. Or when you approach your boss, do this or that. So I know we have some strategies that have been proven to work to help people. And one of them is an anonymous survey, because women should not have to talk about this if they don't want to. But having an anonymous survey allows them to say, yeah, these are my challenges, or no, I'm fine. But if they are having challenges, we've also put on there, do you want to talk about it? Would you be willing to be a menopause champion? And that makes it easier for an employer to figure out, all right, it's not that hard to provide support around menopause.
Interesting. Yeah. I mean, I think what you're tapping into there is really what are those first steps that employers can take? And one of the things that I think, and you and I have had literally thousands of discussions with employers, so we probably know more about this than most people. But I think what's interesting is that people often seem stuck on those first steps. And you highlighted one there, which is do an anonymous survey. I think actually for anybody who would like an anonymous survey, I think if you visit our booth, we can give you one for free. It's very straightforward. You can just put your own logo on it and do it internally. That's simple. And I think there's a couple of others. I mean, Barb, what do you think are the sort of basic first steps that an employer who wants to address this can start to look at?
Oh, well, first of all, I want to reassure you, it's not that hard, and it doesn't cost a lot of money. I mean, it is a very easy way to support your workforce. 20%, right? 1 in 5 of your workforce is a menopausal woman. So there's some easy things you can do. First of all, have an open door policy that's non-judgmental, right? And learn as much as you can about menopause so you understand that somebody might not be asking for a stand-up desk. They might be asking you for a fan on their desk, or they might be really happy if you have more period products in the restroom, or if you allow people to wear summer weight uniforms throughout the year, if you have a service staff, right? So there's a lot of easy things that can really help. Another thing is to have menopause policies in place that say, we understand that some people are not at their best first thing in the morning. So let's make those meetings that where people have to make decisions or presentations, let's do them a little bit later in the afternoon, because we have data that shows that after a night without sleep, most people do better about 4 hours later. So having maybe flexible meeting schedules or work times, these are really easy things that anyone can implement no matter what kind of industry they're in.
Interesting. And yeah, as I said, we can definitely help with some of those just for free. If you come to our booth, there are both anonymous menopause surveys that you can come and download, and also menopause policies, and we can give you the guidelines to that, which will be really helpful. I mean, one thing that I guess, Barb, I've heard a number of times, and I'd like to address head on with you. It's clear that it feels right to support women through this. That it's obvious that that feels the case. But why should employers care? Why is this their responsibility and not your own responsibility?
You know, Max, you taught me a term, VOI. And I think it comes down to VOI. Maybe you could explain it, because so often the costs of the absenteeism, right? The 33% of women who are not going to tell you why they're taking the day off work because of their menopausal symptoms. That's a hidden cost, right? It's not on a balance sheet, right? But VOI makes a huge difference in a company's profitability. And could you explain that? Because, you know, I'm a nurse practitioner. I'm not in business.
Yeah, of course. I mean, what that stands for, of course, is value of investment. And I think what companies are increasingly seeing is that by offering support in these areas, it's a really tangible way to start to address some of these bigger issues that exist in companies. I mean, the most obvious ones are things like dealing with presenteeism head on, dealing with absenteeism, and then ultimately the big one, attrition. And attrition is such a problem because if your goal is to get more senior women in leadership positions, if your goal is to close gender pay gaps, how can you begin to do that when you're losing the very people that you want to get into these positions? So I think increasingly companies are seeing that there's a value proposition to investing in these areas.
Yes, and you know, like I was looking at some numbers and they were really shocking to me. I was looking at the cost to replace someone, no matter what level they're at. You take their salary and you multiply it by between 3 and 5 for retention, right? To recruit, train, whether you have to find a headhunter or something, but it's 3 to 5 times their salary. So as people leave or they're not really there for you, that's an enormous cost. And I would think that, you know, people are really starting to factor that in. And that's why I think we're seeing this conversation change over time.
Amazing, Barb. Thank you. And I think if one thing we can learn is that social change like this can happen very quickly. And I think what we've seen over the last 12 months is just something that was completely taboo suddenly start to become mainstream. And I really hope that we collectively as a society and everyone here today can help to break this taboo around menopause. I think it's been going on for too long. I think there's too many women affected by it. And I think it's just time for the taboo to be broken. So hopefully today we'll give people some of the tools to do that. And as we said, we've got multiple free resources available in our booth. So please come and take them. I'd like to say a massive thank you to you, Barb. You've been a real inspiration in this space and one of the people that I think can genuinely feel proud of helping to create this change. So thank you, Barb, on behalf of everyone. And I've really enjoyed talking to you today. And yeah, thanks a lot.
All right. Thank you, Max. And hopefully we'll see you guys at the booth.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
Okay, shall I stop the recording?